Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what you need to realize is this is already up on the Learn website. It's Q1, Week 6. It's the last thing up there. So if you missed something, it's already there, okay? Top of the page, I want character and characterization notes, and I want the date, 9/26/12. I want to remind you that if you have a question, raise your hand and ask it. Character and characterization. This is going to help you immensely with your Hunger Games package, okay? Do you remember yesterday when we were talking about how you need to underline this in red, this in blue, yellow, and purple? When it asks you about direct characterization and indirect characterization, these are the notes on that, so you need to be clear on what these things are. Yes? You absolutely can. Sit right here. Try not to get any kids in it, though, okay?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'll talk to you about what you need to write down. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what you need to realize is that there are different types of characters, okay? Obviously, there are good characters and bad characters, just like there's good people and bad people, all right? But what you need to know is how the author builds the character matters, okay? If they tell you something, or if they want you to infer something, those kind of things matter. Authors don't just put random stuff in stories. They don't put filler in. Does that make sense? There are no conversations that don't really matter. There are no details that don't really matter. Sure. You know, sometimes how there's just nonsense conversation in life. They're not going to add that nonsense conversation in life in a story. Correct. Make sense? Okay. So, these are the different types of characters. Here's what you need to know. Before you copy this down, pay attention. Dynamic. This is how you are going to remember it every single day until the day that you die. Dynamic is different. Okay? Dynamic is different at the end. Does that make sense? Repeat after me. Dynamic is different.
Dynamic is different.
Dynamic character changes and grows over the course of the story. You need to know that. A dynamic character changes and grows through the story. Sorry?
What do you mean by a character?
Well, it would be a character, so that's a typo. Okay? Or characters. Yes. Absolutely. Bless you. Okay? Dynamic is different at the end because they've changed and because they've grown. Just like you are different at the beginning of 6th grade at the end of 6th grade. Just like you're different at the beginning of 7th grade than you will be at the end of 7th grade. Does that make sense to you? You're changing and you're growing. You're dynamic. Okay? A static character stays the same. How are you going to remember that? Static character stays the same. How are you going to remember that, Alyssa? I see you smiling back there. The S's, static, stays the same. Okay? Copy, copy, copy. Actually, you know what? Put your pencils down. I'm going to talk to you about this, then I'll give you time to copy. So put your pencils down. Focus on me, please. Okay. A protagonist. A protagonist is mostly the main character, Nick. The main character is the protagonist. The main character is almost always dynamic, and this is why. Okay, pay attention. Dynamic means different at the end. The main character is the character that you get the most information from. Does that make sense? So the main character in Harry Potter was in fact Harry Potter. You didn't get, what was his cousin's name? Dudley. Okay? You don't see Dudley changing and growing because Dudley's not the main character. Does that make sense to you? The main character changes and grows because they're the one that the story is about. They're the one that's on this journey, whether or not it's a real journey or whether or not it's a fake journey of like emotional growth. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So here's what you need to know. A protagonist is almost always dynamic. Okay? Antagonist is the bad guy. It can also be the bad force. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the evil queen or the evil wizard, but it does have to be something that's causing conflict. So it could be a hurricane, it could be an earthquake, that kind of thing.
Is it like a main character?
For the most part, it has a larger part in the story because the conflict is what drives the story. So if they don't have a big part, it's not going to make sense for this problem to persist. Does that make sense? So.
It doesn't have to be like a human being.
Correct. Like I said, earthquake or hurricane, that type of thing. Tornado even.
Is there like ever story about it?
Not really, because you wouldn't have a conflict. No one wants to read a story about how my life is butterflies and rainbows and I sit in the meadow all day. You know, you're not going to have, there's nothing there. Does that make sense? Okay. So, here is what you need to know. An antagonist is normally a static character. They're causing a problem. So they have to stay the same, except for sometimes at the end they'll have like a revelation to become a good character. But that normally happens in lower level, like kid stories, right? Because everyone wants to be good at the end. Go ahead.
What about if the character's kind of both? Protagonist and antagonist?
Well, you have to decide whether or not they're the main character. Make sense?
They cause the problem and then fix it.
Okay, well, you have to decide who the conflict is with, and that would probably be the antagonist. Go ahead.
What about Jason Bourne?
Okay, Jason Bourne would be, the main character would be Jason Bourne. He's the protagonist. The antagonist that he's fighting against or that he's working against is President of the government.
Yeah.
Make sense?
But how can he be protagonist if he's killing people?
Because he's the main character. He's the one that you get the story through. You are pulling for him.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. Ma'am.
So have you had this out
I have not. Okay?
Have you read
No, talking about it after class. We'll discuss specific ones. What's up?
the protagonist would
No. Because you're not going to have like a magic pencil that goes through the story. It's still going to have characteristics. It's still going to be a character. Does that make sense? So even like Clifford the Big Red Dog, Clifford's not a person, right? But he still has the attributes that make him a character. Make sense? So I mean, you could have the magic cookie jar, but the magic cookie jar is still going to be the character. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Can the antagonist be like a florist?
A florist, like with flowers?
Florist.
Like with trees?
Yeah.
It could be, but you have a conflict that's driving the character into the forest. So whatever the conflict is, that would be, or whoever the conflict is with would be the antagonist. Nick, we'll talk about your story specifically after this. Okay, guys, we've got to move on, okay? Here's what you need to know. A flat character, this is what I want you to think about. These things, I'm giving you a hint. These things are pretty much, you pretty much know what they are based on their titles, okay? A flat character is flat like a piece of paper. They're either all good or they're all bad. Does that make sense? Okay? I want you to think the evil queen in Sleeping Beauty. We don't know why she's evil. We don't know what she's got against Aurora. We don't know why she hates her and wants her dead. All we know is that she's causing the problem. That's all that's important to the story. Does that make sense to you? A flat character is like a piece of paper. You get one side. Okay? A static character does not change and grow, is normally a flat character. They serve one purpose. That's to cause conflict. Okay? You only need one aspect of them to continue the story. Does that make sense to you? We don't need to know why the evil queen is evil. We don't need to know why she hates Aurora. All we need to know is that she doesn't want her to live. Make sense? Okay. Round character. Here's what I want you to think about. Think about a beach ball. Okay? A beach ball is round, and it's got different colored stripes. Does that make sense? Okay? So each stripe that's a different color represents something else about the character. The more you know about the character, the more the narrator or the author builds the character for you, the more round they become because you get different aspects to them. So for instance, we know Katniss has a temper. We know that she's very protective of Prim. We know that they're poor. We know that she hunts. We know that eventually she's going to volunteer for the Hunger Games because she's trying to save her sister. Does that make sense? The more you learn about a character, the more round they become. Whereas Maeve, the only thing that we know is that she's the governor's daughter. We know that she's Katniss's friend, and we know that she gave her the pin. Pretty much it, right? Okay? She's a flat character. You don't get any of her motivation. You don't get any of the reasons why she does what she does because it's not important to Katniss's story. Make sense, Jason? Okay, alright. Foil. This is something else that you need to know, and then I'm going to stop this and let you guys copy these notes, okay? A foil. Characters are the opposite. Here is why this is important, okay? Let's talk about fairy tales, okay? You have Sleeping Beauty, you have Snow White, you have Cinderella. Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and Cinderella are beautiful, good, kind princesses, right? They're deeply, deeply beautiful people, right? And as their story goes on, you get more and more and more about their character. They become dynamic, they become round characters. But what you need to know is that there is an exact opposite character. You have the evil queen. You have the evil stepmother. Does that make sense? The reason that you have these two extreme opposites, Adam, the reason you have these two extreme opposites is so that they can highlight the differences in each other. Okay? So, Sleeping Beauty is so good and so pretty, too. Sleeping Beauty, I mean, come on, can you be any more clear? And then you have Maleficent, the evil with the horns and the dark cape and the purple skin and the I'm so evil, ha ha ha, okay? All of that highlights how good and how pretty Sleeping Beauty is. And how good and how pretty Sleeping Beauty is highlights how evil and wicked Maleficent is. Does that make sense? Using a foil is a technique that authors do. That way they can highlight the contrast between characters. Make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, stop that, and we'll pick it back up as soon as we scroll down.
That's the normal time.
Yeah.